Okay, Mark, I want to look at the same order we looked at these things in your breakdown. We're going to talk about the face-on first, looking at this pivot and pressure shift into the trail foot or your right foot, your right leg. So recapping, what we see for you is pretty neutral setup, and then in backstroke we start seeing a circling around of this trail hip, right hip. We start seeing this hip working back around towards the target and diving into that lead leg a little too much. So two drills that we can do to work on that, and then I'm going to give you one to kind of check flexibility and make sure that we've got enough internal rotation into that right hip. But the two drills that we can work on the actual movement of that, first one that I do without really making a golf swing is that if we had a door jamb or even a post that we're going to put into the ground, from this view you'd see it's behind the foot and right on your right hip. From this view you're going to see that a stick would be right there touching the right hip. Whether that's a door jamb to where your heel would just be kind of in front of it, or a rod in the ground, either one will work. But with something there, starting with some contact on the right hip or sort of the right glute right there, I want you to make some backswing movements and pivots to where you're going to see the right leg lengthening. The right hip may work a little back and up, but it's not going to create a ton of space off of the door jamb or off of the stick. So what we're seeing out of the trail hip in pivot is we're going to see the trail hip work upward a little bit and backwards. So if we consider what's going on with the pelvis is sort of an oval that's tilted at address. We're a little bit bent over as we should be, which you are. Again, your setup's not bad. So if my pelvis is an oval and it's tilted forward a little bit, okay, as I turn, the trail hip, this would be my right hip bone, should be working upward and backwards, as the lead hip would be working downward and away from the target. That is going to allow me to put a little more pressure in the trail foot. I'm going to start stacking my center of gravity or center of mass a little bit farther right or away from the target versus where we currently are, where the center of gravity starts working back towards the left foot. We're looking to see this right leg lengthen, which is going to make the right hip go up as we pivot, which is going to make that right hip go away from the ball. That's ultimately the movement we're looking to see in the lower body. If I can create lower body pivot where the trail leg is lengthening and rotating, we can see at that point I'm not going to create a lot of space from the same line that I drew on the V1 analysis. The opposite, or what you've got currently going, is we see this trail hip immediately working and diving towards the target. We see the left knee, this is something you can watch for in some video. We see the left knee getting on this side of our left hip. That's sort of something we want to avoid, in my opinion. When we see proper pivot, we see the right hip go up and back, and we see ourselves stay a little bit more in tune with this line. We'd see this lead knee get more underneath this lead hip. And that's about as much as you're going to want to see in terms of that femur. You're going to see that femur straight up and down. When we start seeing it go the other way, we're just sort of spinning is the word I like to use in backswing. So we're spinning. We're almost diving down to where the left hip is going down and staying forward instead of the trail hip going upward and staying a little bit more that way. That's the first piece we want to clean up in lower body movement. Seeing that rotate and tilt properly is going to have an effect on what we see in the upper body as well. So that's just movement piece number one of how the lower body needs to pivot, okay? So if we were going to make some swings, okay, it'd be really easy to see some back swings to where we would actually unweight the left foot, which again is the opposite of what I'm currently seeing, where we're almost diving into that left foot. Or if you tried to pick that up, you'd start falling significantly that way. We'd love to see you able to make a backswing and pivot, maybe a half or a three-quarter swing, to where we unweight the lead foot. So we'd certainly get the sensation of the pressure going into the trail leg and trail hip with a little bit of rotation, then being able to push forward through that. The opposite currently is happening when we're diving into the left leg. we have to kick up to make room for that club, losing a little bit of speed, certainly losing some control of path and face. There's your face-on pivot and rotation and pressure shift pieces and movement pieces. What I look for to make sure that you don't have really mobility issues is we're looking at, if you go into a sort of a split squat position, what is our mobility to rotate into this right hip? Essentially what we're getting, or what we're identifying, is if this sort of the hamstring and the IT band and even the glute, if those are tight, okay, we might have limited mobility to pivot into them, which may be why you're just circling back into the left foot. So in terms of mobility, I check hamstring flexibility, I look at the IT band and the glute to make sure that we don't have any issues rotating internally into the trail hip. If that's the case, you may want to look at some stretches. You can go online. TPI's got a bunch. You can look at Mike Duffy stuff, obviously on Course Kings, and reach out to him about how we might increase the flexibility there to increase internal rotation into the right hip. Movement-wise, though, two pretty simple drills. You feeling the ability for that right hip to go up and back, right leg's going to lengthen, and then as we're swinging the club, the unweighting of the left foot, and then weighting in the downswing, going back towards the target. So there's your face-on pieces. As we look at the down the line, what we're looking at is sort of structure of the arms, and specifically what's going on with the right shoulder. So a recap of what we're currently seeing for you, Mark. Nothing out of bounds right there in takeaway. You're pretty classic for what I'm looking for. Club's more or less on the hands. The leading edge is pretty close to matching the spine. Rough checkpoints for in that ballpark. We're not doing anything drastically away from what I'd consider neutral. Okay, from that position, what I start seeing, because we're diving into this left foot, as we're seeing in pivot going forward, from this spot, as we dive forward and this right arm stays down, okay, we're getting the right arm behind us and stuck behind the rib cage. We're seeing an across the line position because we've over-rotated in that spin of a poor pivot, okay? So we've addressed the poor pivot, okay, but we need to address what's going on here, okay? What we're gonna see out of our better ball strikers is this trail shoulder, the right arm, is going to be a little more upward and off the body and a little more externally rotated. So you're gonna see a lot of videos on Course Kings about what this is. There's external rotation, there's internal rotation. What we're gonna see the majority of our good golfers and ball strikers do is at the top of this backswing, we're gonna see this arm lift a little bit, or adduct, the shoulder's gonna adduct, and we're gonna see a little bit of external rotation in that shoulder. What that's gonna do to the left wrist now is it flattens it out. As this arm gets pinned and the shoulder becomes internal, we see the cupping of this left wrist, which would be the lofting of the club, or opening of the club face, either way you want to look at that, as it's across the line. So the picture of where we're going to see most of our better ball strikers, or conventional positions, is going to be a little bit more upward. The lead wrist is going to be a little more flexion. The trail shoulder is going to be adducted and external. So you can see there's a big difference in what my club's doing versus pinned and rotated, where we're at now, versus better pivot, shoulders up and external, and we've got the club face in a de-lofted position and the shoulder in a correct position. From pinned and rotated, your downswing starts by putting a force on the club this way. The shoulder is actually working more internal initially in downswing. So we're seeing that steepening of the shaft. Your reaction to that from the poor pivot position is to start jumping and throwing the club behind us. And that's what we certainly see in our evaluation on V1. From there, I've kind of ruined my ability to press forward and use the lower body for speed. So I get this into out, throwing of the club, and the vertical exiting of the club. There's the explanation of what's going on. We'd rather see takeaway. As we make a nice pivot, we're gonna see this go a little more up and that shoulder be a little more external. Really easy drill for this. I know Jeff Smith has a video series on some of the structure of the backswing, and he's got a drill in here that is his split grip, okay? So the right hand's gonna start kind of on the steel of the shaft, but in the backswing, we're going to see the right hand slide more and more and more down that shaft. So at the top of the backswing, as you can see, my right hand would have slid to about the middle of the club. From the face-on view, that's gonna look something like that, okay? What we start to see in this drill is that as this right arm goes down the shaft, I'm going to see this trail shoulder operate exactly the way that I should. I'm going to see that arm lengthen off the body a little bit and the shoulder go external, okay? That's what we're looking for. The opposite would be it's pinned on the body and internal, okay? That's where we currently are. If we watch what would happen, that's a little bit more of a neutral position. From this spot, if we created proper pivot and backswing, the downswing sequence becomes way more efficient. The club's already, we've got some width, we've got the club head behind us a little bit better, the trail shoulder is in an external position. When we start rotating for downswing, we actually see this club shallow, we get to see the face stay square, we'd be in a situation that we could just continue to rotate and move the club on the arc with a very square face, moving in a very neutral path instead of getting pulled down, shoulder going internal, shaft vertical, having to dump this back here and seeing that path of the club go very shallow and very into out. A lot of focus on this trail shoulder for you. Not pinned on the body and down, asking my upper body to over-rotate and the club to go across the line in a lofted position. We're looking to see this trail shoulder go a little more up as it goes external. Again, I love Jeff Smith's drill of seeing the sliding right hand. That'd be a beautiful position for the trail arm and trail shoulder. And when we look at what happens, now the left wrist becomes neutral because this arm isn't pinned and folded. So we're seeing a lengthening of the right arm, trail shoulder becoming a little more external and adducted. It's up a little bit, it's external, and it's extended. That's going to create way more time and the ability to shallow that shaft with a square face in the downswing. So you can hit some golf balls, okay? Take away, sliding right hand, okay? Once that trail arm is in that position, let's bring the grip back together, and then you're going to hit a couple of shots, and the ball flight I think you should be looking for from here is how could I rotate to pull the golf ball and see it cut back a little bit. We're going to create a very different impact condition than what you've had. Instead of the face being open and the path going outward, we're going to see the face in that situation being very square, and I'm going to rotate enough to see the path working inward without having face rotation. I'm going to produce a little pull fade. If we can create that drill, takeaway's great, sliding right arm, get those things connected. This has not been compromised. From there, can I chip some pull fades? You just saw the change in the geometry of that club head on the way down. No longer is it underneath working upward and outward through the hit. That club's working much more on the arc around us with a square face. So there's your down the line structure. Really a lot of work on that trail shoulder and trail arm. Face on, a little bit of the pelvis and how we're going to pivot, seeing that right leg lengthen and correct tilts and pivots in the pelvis and weight shift. If we get the backswing structured a little more efficiently, I think the downswing, just the reaction from a little bit of a different position, the downswing is going to clean up a ton just simply out of reacting from a new position. So we start there, clean up the backswing, we'll see what changes for the downswing, and then address what we need to do to clean up there. Backswing changes first, get this organized so there's less tasks for the downswing. Practice a little bit, show me some of those drills, hit a couple of golf balls. Let's see a little bit of an update in a couple of weeks of where that puts us. Thanks, Mark.